Recording excerpted.
Hearing for the St. Augustine, Port Waterine Beach District trim and budget rate. Let's call it to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rivers.
Present.
Commissioner Way.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Flowers, absent. Commissioner West.
I'm finally here.
First order of business is to set the tentative millage rate, whether to stick with the current millage rate or move to the rollback rate. I believe we have to open for public comment before we open this discussion, so
Yeah.
members of the public, no? You can also ask questions at this time, too. Okay, great. In prior discussions, there had been, I think, a general feeling that we should stick with last year's rate. I know I personally would vote to stick with last year's rate, given how much of our own budget we have spent this past year, both on the beach overwalks for the city of St. Augustine Beach and now for the Genovar property. And also, the other thing that Carl Blow brought up, which is a great point, is we are facing some significant cost increases basically across the board here, and lashing ourselves to the mast of a rollback rate could really come back to bite us in the coming year or years. Also recall that once rolled back, the rate cannot be raised again. It is a one-way ratchet. With that in mind, I would move that we tentatively, because again this is not the final vote, but tentatively retain last year's millage rate.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion or dissension?
Well, I think we also need to keep in mind inflation, and I do think, certainly not a bubble, but the housing prices do seem to be stagnant. So I think it's a prudent fiscal decision to stay at the current millage rate. I agree, once you go down, you can't go back up at the same rate. So I think it's the fiscally prudent step to take for the commission.
Great. Any other comment? So we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Next order of business is to set the tentative budget. We've got budget worksheets that Elise provided for us. Once again, we need to open for public comment or question. Okay. So given that we have agreed on last year's rate, I think the case one budget worksheet is probably the one we should look at. I think at this point, the only thing we would really need to discuss is if we wanted to change any specific categories of outlay. Is that right?
Well, basically, the expenditures, the expenses, a lot of these are pretty much set.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. I mean, insurance, legal services,
Yeah, all
et cetera,
that
rents,
is-
those are
yeah.
all locked in stone. So it's
Your district.
district projects,
And
right?
you could, and that number basically is like your,
That's everything that's left over after
if
expenses.
you want to put, if you want to say, and I could do another budget worksheet for just that category, that you want to spend so much on this, and you have $500,000 to spend for the year.
Yeah,
So you could do, okay, for dredging, I don't know that he has dredging coming up this year. You want to make sure that that's,
right. They're actually not going to ask for that this coming year, Jim told us, because
Yeah.
they're going to focus all their energy on find money for the Genovar property. So they won't be asking us for that this coming year. So our budget for this coming year will need to reflect that. So maybe before we commit to the final budget, it would be worth us getting to see the breakdown, kind of the way you do in the treasurer's report, so we can see the individual categories within the uncommitted funds or within the sort of automatic spending. But because we don't have that in front of us now, there's really not a whole lot where, I don't think, unless anybody has any bright ideas.
what do you want broken down?
So you were saying that you could potentially show us a more detailed budget, similar to the way the treasurer's report is broken down. This is, okay, so we're budgeting, $8,000 for police overtime,
For that 500,000.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So within that five, I'm saying just in case anybody wants to make any modifications or the public wants to suggest any modifications to that budget.
I know, yeah, because I know the police overtime
Mm-hmm.
and the derelict boats, and you all have you guys come up with how much you want to spend on derelict boats, how much you want to spend on, well, the police overtime is pretty much set.
Right, and
I can put all that down.
Great, and that will happen at the final budget
And
meeting, is what I'm
I'll
saying,
email all
right?
that before the final hearing.
Great. So in the meantime, I don't think there's anything to do now except to vote to, unless anybody wants to modify any of what's being presented in case one here, I think, right? Go ahead, Tom.
I just have a question on the 2022-2023 proposed budget, which is, I suppose, that would be the one we would be adopting. Why is secretarial zero?
Because when Joe's CPA did it, they broke it down by secretarial and accounting. I'm putting my fee, it's mine, it's just going into accounting. I'm not breaking it
So
down.
what's the category for yours? Is it-
Accounting.
Just accounting. Yeah,
accounting.
just under telephone, right at the top there.
That's it,
Okay.
yeah.
So just
Well, why can't we go ahead and adopt that?
yeah,
Well, because
Well,
the
this is
final
tentative.
hearing you're going to adopt.
Well,
Right, but with tentative-
Tentatively, I move that we
Tentatively,
tentatively adopt the 2022-2023 proposed budget.
a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I believe that's it. We have one more opportunity for public comment. That's a third pass.
Say something.
Well, in that case, there being no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, now to my
Recording excerpted.